Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Large Blast podcast, where we're getting Eldar-y with it today. That's right. You never thought it would be the day, but we're getting Dark Eldar-y. That we're going to torture your ears with some Dark Eldar knowledge. I'm your host, Stoney, and I'm joined as always by Welshie.
You will never find a more wretched a hive of scum and villainy.
And Matt.
Bring your daughter to the slaughter.
Let her go! Let her go! Let her go!
Oh, well, we're going to be bringing our daughter straight to Commorragh this episode. We're going to talk a little bit about Dark Eldar later, but we like to get things kicked off with something we call hobbies goings on. So let's get things kicked off there with a bit of hobbies goings on. Matt, what have you been doing? Have you, since last time we spoke, all those many weeks ago, you still working on your Tyranids?
I've completed the Tyranids.
You've completed the Tyranids, mate.
It's weird we haven't seen any pictures yet or anything on these.
Yeah, I haven't painted them.
Okay. Oh,
yeah, I've put them together.
Okay.
There's been so much weird stuff online about this. It's been rumbling on for months. I thought we should talk about female Space Marines. It has been rumbling on almost the entire time we've had our Twitter up since Christmas, whenever it's been. Just people arguing on there endlessly about female Space Marines. And we spoke about the Fabius Bile and the Cool Book, and maybe that could be Chaos Primaris Marines. But the other thing I thought was, what if it's some sort of weird way that Games Workshop are going to write in female Space Marines? Like, I don't know.
Ones.
Because they're
maybe
so
Chaos...
emotional, they're not affected by the Noctilith pylons. Whoa!
We here at the Large Blast podcast would like to apologise for recent jokes made by Welshie. He's very sorry, and we've booked him into a rehab facility.
That's a joke, listeners. I love you all. Classic jape there.
Yeah, well, I reckon Games Workshop, you know how they sometimes like release like a model that's like got that real like old school kind of sensibility about it, like they did with the Noise Marine, and they've done a couple of, even with the Zote and some of these other like really reaching back into the Rogue Trader, because there is actually a Rogue Trader female Space Marine, isn't there? Because she's called like Mad Mavis or some crazy thing like that, or whatever. Back in the days when they all had names and whatnot, they just did like a little remake of that little squad, you know, with Mad Mavis, the female Space Marine, in, not being like, hey, this isn't canon, but we're doing it anyway, or this might be canon. We don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. It's Games, except for unless you're high up in Games Workshop. That's the only person, and even those people, they don't care. They're just looking at the money.
They're not going to do it.
I don't know.
Do it. There's a vocal minority online that are shouting about female Space Marines, and they are not the majority, and Games Workshop knows that that's the fact. Whatever our own stance is on the podcast, Games Workshop must know that the vast majority of players are against female Space Marines.
I mean,
a
Space
don't know.
Marine has been so like modified and is in like a suit of armor. It
Exactly.
could just be a woman in there anyway. Like, who the fuck knows? It's
that's
just like...
But that's exactly it. I was thinking about it the other day. Like, basically, I mean, they were male, but because they're no longer human, they're really kind of no longer male. They're like they're their own sex. But I don't know. I mean, I think online, I think it's a real 50-50 split.
It's absolutely not 50-50.
It is. It is.
Absolutely not a 50-50 split. I can guarantee you that it is not a 50-50 split. It might be 50-50 split of people that say they're okay with it, but really,
okay, yeah, that's what
they know that they would be annoyed by the law.
Yeah,
I'd be annoyed by the law. Sod it. I'd stick my panners on the post. It would piss me off if they did it. I wouldn't quit Warhammer. I wouldn't cry, but it would annoy me.
I would not be annoyed if they brought in some sort of story arc with this cool book with Fabius Bile as an example, and said that Fabius Bile had created some female Space Marines, but that doesn't change all of the lore. It doesn't change all of the chapters. It just means it's possible, but most, if not all, Space Marines are still, you know.
I hope there's a little conversation
but
between Fabius, between Belisarius Cool and one of the other dweebs that he's called in for his big space meeting. Puts his hand up and says, "Oh, Mr. Cool, wouldn't it be excellent if we used females?" And Fabius Bile just turns to him and slaps him in the face and says, "Yeah, it would be excellent, but we can't put as much muscle mass on the female body as we can on the male. That's why we've always used males, because they're fighting machines."
We've done it again. Large Blast Podcast wants to apologise. Sorry about that. Our bad. Sorry, just jokes.
It's such a strange hill for so many people to decide to die on as well. Do you know what I mean? It's a fucking fantasy game. It's so silly. It's
like I say, I'm not going to quit, but it would make me angry. It's just unnecessary pandering.
Have you seen people do... they go the other way and they do the Misters of Battle, where they do the kind of the Sisters of Battle with like, you know, the tits shaved off or whatever, and kind of try to you know, do it the other way. I mean, who cares? It's just like,
I don't understand. Of all the places and all the things and all of the IPs that you could get a bone in your ass complaining that there's no female representation, and it's 40k so is not it.
Exactly. It's so silly to start applying like morality in a way to 40k, because the whole thing is it's supposed to be like a kind of a caricature of religion and like all this other stuff, which I think most of us can agree is pretty segregated in terms of male and female. So,
I can't think outside of Starship Troopers of a more equal representation of male and female characters across the main body of the universe outside of the Space Marines. Your day-to-day human female is the same. Every book you read, there's equal amounts of female governors. There's equal amounts of female guard. We've got a female in charge of Cadia. Yeah, but so what?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Let's
there we go. We're starting to go down the route again.
It's the news. Wow. It's the chuffing news.
Have you heard 6s are now 4s?
It's the news.
Gene Stealer Limo's back.
News.
That's right, everybody. It's the news. And this time we've got a light-hearted news story in which I've fished off the internet, which happened recently, which I thought might be quite interesting and I wanted to tell you guys about. So buckle up, because I'm going to tell you guys a little story about a tournament that happened recently, right? And there's this guy there, and he's rolling. He's got this army that's like kind of really dependent on going first. He's got the, it's like a bit of a glass cannon army. If he goes first, he can wipe fuckers off the board, kind of thing. So every time he's rolling to go first, he's getting a 6. He's getting 6s every time. And eventually, one of the players like calls him up on this, and they're like, "Oh, let's have a look at your dice." They get a guy involved. They do a couple of rolls with the dice, and they're like, "These look a bit shady to us." And he's like, okay, he kind of gets back a hold of the dice. It's like, no, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave the tournament, whatever. I'll just go if everyone's accusing me of cheating. And this guy comes back and he's like, I've got a way of testing them, because apparently if they put lead inside these weighted dice, and you have two, you have one that always rolls a 1 and one that always rolls a 6.
Okay.
Right.
He's like, okay, well, if we get a glass of water and we drop these dice in the water, it should land one at a 6 and one at a 1, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so they're weighted. So so this guy's like, no, that's it. I'm going to the bog. No one disturb me. I'm going to the toilet, whatever. He goes to the bog. And then he comes back and he's like, "Oh, I've lost the dice. I've lost the dice."
No, he's flushed them.
He's flushed the dice. Well, someone goes into the toilet and they realise that because they're lead in there, they haven't actually flushed them, and they've actually just sitting perfectly on a 6 and a 1 at the bottom of the toilet, because he's tried to flush these. So he got booted out of there, and I just thought that was kind of like a nice story of a Warhammer cheater getting his just desserts,
getting caught right at the bottom of the toilet bowl.
Yeah.
Oh, blimey. You do sometimes think at the big tournament, there must be more dice rigging than ever gets caught at these things. We're talking like hundreds of people tournaments with people that are really keen to win.
Probably, yeah.
I wonder whether, I don't know, because we never played any of the massive big tournaments. If you get to the final, do they provide you with dice?
That's a good question.
They should. If you're at the point where it really matters.
But I'm sure you can probably get weighted dice that look like a lot of standard dice. I'm sure that maybe there's if you're in the dice rigging game, you're like, oh, that's an X750, and then you just rummage through your pocket and you've got one.
Yeah. The thing, because I mean, we have played in a few kind of slightly more casual tournaments, and the thing that I've never understood talking about dice is how weirdly protective everyone is of their dice.
Yeah.
I mean, so weird.
I mean, I always just offer, you just use my dice. Then we only got one set out. We're not going to
the way everyone.
Some people, when you've rolled a handful of dice and you've done 20 wounds, and then someone's like, no, I'm going to now count out 20 of my own. Just roll my dice, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you count out 22 dice?
Yeah. I think especially if you've got one of those rolling trays that they use quite a lot, because it's not like the dice are going, you can see them all in one place and just pass them backwards and forwards. Yeah.
Slide them up and put them down. Yeah, you do come across players like that are really protective, and it immediately makes me think you're cheating. Because why would you be protective? Why? Unless you think I'm going to steal them from you, pocket some of your dice. I find that a very odd thing.
If it's a kind of a standard to be very protective of your dice, particularly if this guy was only because he was using them for his go first rolls only, in the game, like other stuff was happening, like at a random rate that people wouldn't notice. But
here's my special dice that I'm only going to roll once.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like give him a blow.
Bit suspect.
Oh shit, it's the 1-1. Fuck.
Well, I guess on dice rolling news, we've got news as well, because Matt and I have played our first game of 10.
Oh, okay. Not well. How's it gone? How's it gone?
I thought it was very enjoyable, Matt. It was very close. Came, right down to the wire. We didn't play with the secondary missions because it was our first game. We just went straight up objective control primary. I had a little kind of 1 or 2 turn dabble last week, but not without Matt. That's the first full one I've played. So what did you reckon, Matt?
Yeah, it was... like I said when we were playing, it feels different. It's a really kind of weird thing to say, feeling different, but just the game, some of the aspects of the game were just ever so slightly different, that you knew it wasn't just an FAQ'd version of 9th edition. There was different dynamics. There was different dynamics with what you were looking at, the stats for your units and how they interact with other things. Yeah, I mean, I can't see it being any different to 9th edition, to be honest. Like, I still would have preferred carrying on with 9th edition.
Yeah, I don't think it's enough of a change to have warranted the change, if I'm completely honest.
Oh, man.
Now that 9th was relatively balanced. I think it's fun, like, getting the cards, though, like, the units. So Matt played, because we've had very little time, Matt played with an army that I'd made for him, essentially. So they were units that he's not used to. But for me, it was 2 of my own armies. So seeing the stats changes and be like, oh shit, that thing's toughness 6 now, and it was toughness 5 before. Like, that's fun. I'm kind of thinking how to build lists differently as you play. I felt it almost felt a bit more narrative because the rules were on the sheet. Like, I feel like it feels more narrative now. You've got characters attached to units. You haven't just got a guy who's got a weird, anything that comes within 9 inches of him suddenly gets better. It's like you've had to decide to put Kay Van Shrike specifically with the Vanguard vets to make them better for the whole game, not just anyone that comes near him suddenly improves. Do you know what I mean? That I think's fun. And the individual rules being on the cards also feels a bit more thematic. Like, everything's got its own thing that it does better. So narratively, that's fun, but that's going to be a nightmare to play against tournament-wise, because you're essentially going to have to know what every unit in the game is capable of doing, which is not what they said they were doing by standardizing rules back into the rule book. It's essentially, do you know what it is, Matt? It's the 7th keywords mixed with the 9th excessive rules. That's essentially what we've got. We've got like both things put together. But it was quick. We played our first game. It was only 1,000 points. We played our first game tightly within 3 hours, which we wouldn't have done at the start of 9th. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I suppose that's the game designers deserve some credit for that, because I'd only kind of flicked through the rule book before, and obviously we played a lot of 9th, 8th, and 7th, so it's all a bit familiar. But yeah, I mean, we cracked out a game. I wasn't that familiar with the army. That's got to be a good thing.
That was interesting to see, because I printed the cards format with each of the individual units with their own cards, and obviously he'd never played the army at all. So in terms of like someone turning up to 40k for the first time, I think you can do that for the first time in a long time. You can just be given an army and pick up and play. Obviously, you've got to know the core rules, but I think that's quite good. That's
cool. Yeah, I always thought that was like a really difficult thing. Like if you ever wanted to try to get someone into 40k, it's so difficult to sit down with them at the army building stage and be like, okay, well, these are models or what, like, so you have to kind of like make them an army or whatever. Like if you've ever got someone who you're trying to desperately get into 40k, like, hey, come along to a game, it's going to be great, and you make them an army out of some of your things. You try to make it as badass and broken as possible, and they show up and get their ass kicked for 3 hours and just hate the fucking game, you know.
Oh, and then you give them the battle scribe and they're scrolling through a 20-page document. Like in this, there's a picture of the thing on a card in front of them, and they can go point at it and go, oh, that's that thing, and it does this.
Yeah, it's needed that for a very long time, so that's good. Yeah.
Rolling in my 6-4.
Are you sick and tired of the same old holiday?
I am.
Bored of the pesky law always getting in the way of your good time?
It was just one murder.
Got some orifices you want to explore?
Finding new ones every day.
Then why not come down to the cyber neon nightmare world of Commorragh? The zany homeworld of the Dark Eldar, and home to some of the wackiest debauchery known to man. Skin a slave, bugger your neighbour, drink virgin's blood, or do all three at the same time. It's like Christmas at Ed Gein's house. So pack up your leather bodysuit and your butthole repair cream, because it's time to head off to the Dark City.
All right, guys, you heard it. That's right. We need to get our Factor 50 butt repair cream and our shades and our leather jackets ready to go down to be tourists in Commorragh, the Dark City, the city of the Dark Eldar. That's right. We're doing another Eldar episode. So many people have been clamoring. They're like, oh, the last Eldar episode you did back in like episode 10 or whatever was so good, so informational that we need another one. Exactly. So we're doing another one, and here it is. But I think before we go, maybe we should have a little rundown of the city, just have a little bit of a history, find out a little bit about the culture, you know, before we saddle up and ship out.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I always like to read the history in the guidebook on the plane before you land somewhere, you know?
Absolutely.
We should at least understand where it's come from.
Exactly. So I mean, Commorragh is massive, isn't it? It's like a city it's bigger than a planet, really. Mm-hmm. Because it exists in the Webway, it's got sort of a weird geometry, like it's got these weird portals on it, so parts of it are kind of in completely different parts of space, things like that, which is quite strange.
I was thinking about it when I was looking at that, how it's kind of like across reality. It was the Penrose stairs, you know, like those optical illusions, how it can all be in like different place. Everything can be in different places yet be in the same place simultaneously. That's how kind of I picture it.
Yeah, I think that it must have some kind of weird mind-bending stuff like that. Like you put your arm in a cupboard and it comes out and touch your own arse or something like that. You know, it's like something weird. But anyway, but it's also an ancient city. Like it's existed. Like no one really knows who made it. Even it's so old and I
think it's the old ones though, right? I mean, I guess we don't know who the old ones are, but that's the
I mean, it could be it's just one of those, or it could have been Eldar, started by Eldar, and then they just forgot, you know, it just got forgotten. There's all sorts of theories about it, but I don't think there's any real. I think Games Workshop have always seemed to have kept it quite vague, haven't they, about where it's come from, it seems. Because it was such an important kind of port, because people could go in there and zap around all over the Webway with these teleporters and things. It basically started pre the fall of the Eldar. It basically became this kind of like crazy port town where it had these governors that kind of ruled sections of it, because it had all these weird people coming in and out and these sailors and things. It was more or less allowed to kind of govern itself.
I read that. Like no man's land. Like it was too important for anyone to really be in control of it.
Yeah, so it kind of lived at a distance of the Eldar Council and all the kind of the boring kind of stuck-up Eldar rules that were going around. So, so it had a lot of kind of pirates and things like that.
So this is already sounding like somewhere you'd want to go on holiday. Like this is where the Eldar went on their stag do's.
It was one of those. It's a bit like Vegas. What goes on in Commorragh stays in Commorragh back then. It was kind of like this big, like, you know, get married to a hooker by an Elvis impersonator kind of town back then. It was all kind of fun and games pre the fall, you know. But also it was kind of shady as well, as in like they turned a blind eye to like slave trade and stuff like that went on there. So it was all this. It was kind of like, it was a pretty dodgy place at the same time, but it was also a place of trade over everything. So if you had a lot of money and stuff, you could basically get away with anything that you wanted to do, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Piratey.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought, like pirates or privateers, perhaps, rather than like full-blown pirates at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. But then after the fall, everything kind of changed. Like all these governors and stuff like that, they kind of overthrown, and Baals started taking over the place. And and although in the old days, you might go there and sort of potentially expect to see some cruelty. After the fall, cruelty was kind of expected of you. You'd go there, and it would kind of expected of you to go there as a slave trader or someone there to partake in some horrible debauchery or something like that. Everything, the whole place kind of changed. It kind of became a bit of a caricature of that sort of stuff.
And by the fall, you mean the fall of the Eldar, yeah? In terms of
that's right. I should probably explain that. Yeah. That's right. So the Eldar basically. They all fucked too much and ate too many Ferrero Rocher, did too much coke, all that kind of stuff, like real kind of dandy lifestyle shit. And basically Slanesh was like, well, you guys are just too dandy to exist, and I'm gonna pop up, and I'm gonna now Slanesh is here. And he came up and shot ropes all into the Webway. So Slanesh showed up, and after that everything kind of changed.
I guess that after that, and it starts changing, if anywhere is going to become the nexus of evil, it's going to be this place that basically doesn't really have any governance to start with.
It
is, as we said, it's a place where borderline pirates were hanging around before. It's definitely going to be the place to escape to if you're having thoughts about skinning your boss.
Yeah. Well, it's quite because the Dark Eldar are very unpicky. There's this thing that I was reading about, which you probably know as well, which is about how the Eldar and the Dark...
Hello, Large Blast podcast listener, Editor Stoney here. In this next part of the show, I basically fuck up a bunch of Eldar lore. Who would have thought it, right? So I'm here to put the record straight. Basically, every craft world Eldar's life is directed by the path structure. These paths serve as a method of keeping the Eldar in check against sloth and debauchery and all that kind of shit that brought them to the end of their empire. It's a bit like AA, but for not doing fucked up shit, not being too eldery. Now let's get back to past me, stumbling my way through some Warhammer bullshit.
The Dark Eldar differ from the standard craft world Eldar because they're on this kind of path of damnation where they think that by torturing a soul you make a kind of a shield around yourself that protects you from Slanesh. But the kind of the good Eldar, I forget what they're called, the Avari or the Yatari or the Avari
Yari
or something, Juventus or whatever they're called.
Boring fucking faction.
The Borari or whatever they're called. Ferrari for the Ferrari. Anyway, but so those guys, they're like, no, you're on the wrong path because you're not actually shielding yourself from Slanesh. You're like giving a bit of yourself to Slanesh every time you do it, which is quite interesting. So they're kind of really anti-Dark Eldar, but the Dark Eldar will take anybody. And the other Eldar, the Borari or whatever, if you're not too far gone, they'll take you back as well. So that like people like the Corsairs and stuff, if you're like a young upstart Borari Eldar and you're going around being a bit of a, rapscallion, then sometimes it's a bit like military camp or something. They'll be like, go off to the Dark Eldar and fuck around with them for like as one of the pirate guys for like a couple of years and then come back kind of thing. So there is a bit of a kind of juggling between the two, as long as your soul hasn't too much of your soul has left you, because there's a really good quote from Jez Goodwin about the Dark Eldar, which is that they're like a bucket of water with like a hole in, and Slanesh is the hole basically, and all the water is their soul, and it's kind of slowly draining out. And every time they like torture someone or drink another person's soul, which I think we'll talk a bit about in the future, they kind of refill that bucket.
Oh, all I could think when you were saying hole and liquid coming out was some kind of sexual analogy, like Slanesh being their urethra or something like that. Yeah.
All
the juices are going out one end and all the juices are coming in the other end.
Slanesh perks him another squirt hole.
That's a great analogy.
I like that.
Yeah.
But you're always trying to fill it up, because as we'll see, perhaps when we go on our tour of the city, a lot of life seems to be about filling that hole, filling that bucket up, even with more life juice.
Absolutely,
whichever manner you choose to consume it.
That's what they call the thirst.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's weird. They're kind of in the lore, they're quite interesting because, like, in kind of 3rd edition, I think it's when they were introduced, wasn't it? But like they're almost kind of like a direct rip-off from Warhammer Fantasy, the kind of lore and stuff around it. They've got this like really interesting kind of like build up where, again, you know, old school Games Workshop is like, oh, let's just do, we've done orcs, we've done dwarfs in space, let's do fucking, you know what I mean? They just did all the fantasy stuff, and they kind of like just ripped all the fantasy lore and just put space in front of the terminology. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of like, so it was quite interesting, but the way that Dark Eldar have developed into their own faction, quite separate from the kind of the trappings of the fantasy world, is quite interesting. And the first is definitely kind of a part of that, this kind of like almost kind of like vampirism, you know, because they get all like withered and fucked up when they don't fuck up slaves, basically, or cause pain or anything. They've got so much of their kind of world and society revolves around this idea of causing pain.
Yeah, they're called the parched, aren't they? They like shrivel up. They look like
that's right. And they live in the kind of the slums of their
and to kind of make the most. They kind of creep around hoping to catch someone getting beaten up so they can get a little bit of juice.
They're just like the shit vampires that like eat rats or something like that.
I saw it written down that the more suffering, the more psychic nourishment they take from their subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
Psychic nourishment. That's a good nourishment. I wish I had some more of that in day-to-day life. I'm not going to skin anyone, I promise.
That we know of.
So if that's how the city was formed, like, who's in charge of it now then?
Well, only the guy that claims to have discovered how to drink souls in the first place. Old, what's his first name?
Abzudrubel.
Yeah.
Asdrubel Vecht.
Asdrubel
Vecht.
You guys keep going.
Asdrubel Vecht.
Asdrubal.
Well,
that would be good old Asdrubal Vecht, as far as we can tell.
It's Asdrubale.
It's Asdrubal.
It's Asdrubale.
Asdrubal.
Asdrubale.
We're going to call him Vecht for the rest of the episode, okay? So Vecht, basically, he is the current runner of Commorragh. He is
Supreme Overlord.
But a lot of his history is kind of clouded in mystery, because one of the main things that they sort of say about him
is that he's really into 90s hip-hop.
He's massively they call him MC Vecht. You catch him down doing some boom bap type shit. One of the main things about him in the lore is that he tells a lot of lies. So they do this thing where they say like, this is quoted from him, but then at the same time they say that he's a liar. So they've got all this like crazy lore linked to him, but at the same time they say that he's full of shit.
A bit like Alfarius.
A bit like Alfarius. So it's quite fun, his kind of lore stuff. But he claims to at least be one of the eldest Eldar, you know, way before Dark Eldar were a thing, and actually one of the people that helped to build Commorragh in the first place is one of his like crazy claims. But basically, at some stage, was it M32? I don't know. I got the date where there was the big Imperium invasion on Commorragh.
No, I haven't got the date of that, but he was definitely around for the fall, wasn't he? Because he was around for that. Was like M29, something like that.
And he was one of the people that discovered. And he claims to at least be the person to discover the fact that an Eldar can like drink another being's soul. Right. He was basically the person that decided down this other path, the path of whatever it was. I can't remember what I called it.
Damnation,
Damnation, that was what it was, but it was something like that. He like says, sorry, Eldar players, but the path of damnation or whatever it is. He was basically kind of the person that said, like, this is possible, you know, and kind of like found it.
And he was a slave, right? He worked his way up.
That's
from
what
the bottom,
I read.
At least that's what he says. But he still seems to have come from fairly humble beginnings to work his way up to.
As they all do. Yeah.
Cool. So there is actually the Imperials are all like, at some stage, all the Space Marines and everybody, they're like, fuck this. fuck this like Webway nonsense. These Dark Eldar fucking about in there. We need to saddle up and do a big old fucking Imperial style attack on it. So they tool up and they go out there. And this is back when there's still a lot of cabals and stuff there. It's after the fall, but a lot of the cabals are a bit shit and kind of like they're not really battle hardened. They've just been fucking about in Commorragh their whole time. So the Imperials show up and they fuck up a massive section of Commorragh. They're blasting it with all their crazy missiles and stuff. And they fuck up a huge section of Commorragh. And this is kind of where Vect takes his opportunity to rise to power, because he's like, okay, cool. Everybody's all fucked up. It's me and my gang that are called the Black Hand.
Is it not the Black Heart?
Black Heart, I think.
Oh, is it the Black Heart? Okay, well, that's just a dyslexic misreading of hand. And basically rise to power because he basically does well against like fighting against the rallying people and fending off the Imperials. So eventually they get rid of the Imperials, and then Vect it basically is like, right, well, I'm in fucking charge now. It's this being in charge in Dark Eldar society means that you're constantly looking over your shoulder. Everybody's out to try to fuck you over and like gain power. It's very much a dog eat dog kind of world, you know, and it's also got a bit of a kind of the American dream to it, where you can start as a slave, and as long as you do enough fighting and killing everybody else and being sneaky, you can kind of get your way to the top, you know.
Yeah, I think sneaky is one of his things, isn't it? Like one of the myths that I've read around him is like he's debated Zeech, and he's like just as sneaky and changeable, and has so many plans going on, like this web of spies and lies and all of his torture, getting all of these secrets from people. That's kind of what gives him his power, is his kind of knowledge and his age. That you know.
Well, absolutely. I mean, well, have you guys heard of did you guys hear about the demon invasion that's happened?
The latest thing?
That's very interesting. So speaking about Vect being a sneaky motherfucker, basically one of the reasons why psychers aren't allowed on Commorragh is because of its kind of proximity to the warp, and how close it is. If you start doing psychic shit so close to the warp, then you're basically asking demons to break in and start running amok. And there's this gladiator called Yavarin, who's like some cool ass gladiator, and ends up dying, and somehow comes back to life, but is reborn with some kind of psychic potential, which basically like blasts a hole into the warp, and all these demons start flooding in and start going crazy. And obviously Vect is like, fuck, this ain't great. I've got demons running in. A bunch of the other cabals start being like, oh, this guy Vect is a fucking prick. He's let all these demons in. We should overthrow him and stuff. So Vect, knowing that Commorragh is massive, and that basically because it's all done through these portals and stuff as well, you can kind of shut off areas of the city, kind of cut them loose, and kind of like direct them to like weird parts of space and stuff. It's a bit like a system of sort of train junctions.
We should say this is like in the past the 40th millennium. This is like the build up to the Great Rift opening, isn't it? It is. Yeah, it is. I don't know. It is. Yeah.
So he basically is like, okay, so I've got all these cabals all pissed off that the demons are here, and I've got a bunch of demons here. So basically he starts like redirecting the demons through the portals of the city to the parts of the city where the cabals that don't like him are. So they start like fight, and then he goes like, oh my god, this place is overrun with demons. We're gonna have to like cut it off and shoot it out into space. So like, and these are like continent size areas of like almost kind of like an unfathomably large city, because it's in this weird geometry. It's kind of like it's funny because it's not all like one place. Even though it's all connected by these portals, and you wouldn't know necessarily you're like going to a completely different part of space when you walk through it. But like it's all a completely, like you might be over in the north right hand sector of the Webway just by going down the shops, and whereas you live in like
it's just
1,000
like that
miles
bit on
away.
Interstellar where he folds the paper over and puts the pen through it. That's exactly what's going on.
So Vex starts like shoving these demons into these guys and just fucking them over. But I think that's really like a classic example of kind of like Dark Eldar sneakiness, and this kind of like constant infighting, because he basically realized that Commorragh was so big that as long as he just keeps, because this demon invasion hasn't been dealt with. It's literally just being like channeled around different parts of Commorragh, because he's like, well, Commorragh's so massive. As long as I keep channeling them in different areas, then they're never going to get to any of the juicy bits where they're going to do any kind of real damage.
They're just running round and round in circles on the Penrose stairs. That's what's going on. It's just setting them up. They're just going round and round, chasing each other's tail.
That there's a bit of like Inquisitor Cryptman to that, but this guy's maybe got a better tactic to fight in the Chaos Hordes.
Yeah. I think whichever way you look at it, and whatever stories about him you believe, he's clearly one of the most powerful single characters in the 40k universe. I mean, he's the top dog of the Dark Eldar, and he knows things that, he's a secret gatherer to put any of the chaplains of the Dark Angels to shame. What he doesn't know about you, he's the blackmail master. He's just cunning and evil. So it sounds like a nice place. A nice place to explore.
Yeah. So anyway, I reckon we should tool up. Have you got your bum bag on? Have you got your traveller's wallet round your strapped in with your money in and all of that? Okay.
I hope they take traveller's checks.
So the Large Blast podcast boys collected together their most garish holiday clothes, climbed into the LBP faster than light space race car, and headed out to Commorragh. The sprawl of the city was a strange mass of ornate curves and obscene architecture. Platforms and walkways filled the sky in a never-ending high-rise of life. Jet bikes zoomed past at breakneck speeds, inches between them and burning death amongst twisted wreckage. The neon lights of the pleasure clubs flashed on a spectrum human eyes could not comprehend, and the sound of their screaming victims was muffled only by the strange beat of the music. Violence was expected here. Every creature under its stolen suns was required to do it at some time. It was the ultimate shadow that all that resided in this dark place must live in. But the tickets were cheap, and the LBP all had holiday at the same time to use up from work, so it made sense. And after some tinnies on the train, they finally arrived in the dark city of Commorragh.
Cool, so here we are, guys. The big city, Commorragh, the big smoke, the big greasy, the slimy passage. Take her in, have a sniff. What do you guys think? Where should we go first? Have a look at this map. What takes your fancy?
Oh, we found a great map. Well, I really want to go and see the stolen suns that power the city, because I think that sounds really cool.
Oh yeah, that does sound cool. I was reading about them.
Stolen suns, you say? You mean like actual stars?
Yeah, actual stars.
Tell us more.
Far above the gigantic metallic peaks of Commorragh are the Limii. The Limii, or in other words, the black suns, the Limii, which are dying stars ablaze with poisoned light that were captured and harnessed to serve the energy sources of Commorragh at the height of the Eldari Empire. So way before the fall, they are stars that somehow were moved above the city in some way. It must have gone into the Webway. So these stars are in the Webway.
That's one of the cool things about it, is like when one of them like starts, they're like, oh, this star's running out. They tool up in this weird ship that's specifically designed for like capturing stars, and they go out and grab another one and stick it in there. Yeah.
You reckon they pulled it back, and then they got to the Webway gate and they were like, oh shit, it
doesn't fit.
Not going to fit.
Get someone up there to build a new gate.
Yeah. It's just when they say they've got a weird ship that's designed to do it, it's just a guy with like oven gloves on being like, come on, hurry up, it's really hot.
Yeah. Well, from what I've read, apparently, and from what I can see looking at them, that there's several captured suns at the moment orbiting Commorragh, powering the city. And in real space, the Imi, the black suns, could swallow all the vastness of the city in a single gulp. So they're a sun. They're absolutely enormous, much bigger than the city itself, and yet the technology that they have constrains the power like a prisoner bound in a cell. which is quite cool. But every now and again, a solar flare curls from a captive sun and lights up sections of Commorragh. So these dark areas of the dark city glint and shine back, and it says that 1 billion panes of crystal glitter across the dark city when these solar flares shoot out. It's almost like the only natural light that is in the city.
Imagine it's just like, as soon as it comes on, it's just people like bumming, like, oh God, it's just like all the shadows.
Apparently there used to be solar cults, so people would almost worship these suns, and there's still a few remaining. I'd be quite interested to see more about them, but just seeing these suns is amazing. I mean, I can't think of another race that controls suns like that. Necrons must do somehow.
I mean, I suppose maybe the technology is similar to like the old one technology that was adapted to ensnare the Catan. I think like we're talking that kind of power level.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny that they can't even like have a power station that isn't essentially powered by BDSM though. When they're like, "Oh, it's the slave, our sun slave.
We're gonna whip the sun."
So you've been a naughty son. It's basically like a son in a gimp suit, the black sun. Isn't it?
It has to be in a prison. Yeah,
it's a bit like, you know, the Teletubby sun is like it's got like a face, but it's just like a black sun with like a zip on its mouth. Like.
Yeah.
I'm literally just imagining that popping up in a full gimp suit.
Yeah. But with the same.
That's what the Eldar kids watch when they're
But with the same sound behind it of the baby like laughing, crying.
Blimey. So is there much else there? Like, is there a city around this, or is it kind of, presumably it's some kind of weird warped space in that they can fit these suns within the area, and to
I
exist
thought they kept
there
them
would
in
be
like
very
big
odd.
towers, is what I heard.
That sounds interesting. I mean, I only my research before. I mean, obviously we're looking at them because we're on holiday, but because it's so dark around them, we can't tell how they're being held there.
No, but every time it does flash, I keep, like Stoney says, my eye keeps getting drawn away to some stuff going on in the basement.
All I read up was that they're kind of above the city, but as we said, like the city is not in kind of one place, one time,
and above doesn't make sense.
I think
in the city either.
I think that's it. Is like actually trying to understand the geography and kind of stuff like that of Commorragh is like, it's never really fully explained. It's kind of designed to be confusing to us, as I think we'll find out with some other places that we might be able to visit on our trips. For instance, have you guys? Do you guys maybe want to go to the Alandrak? Have you heard of the Alandrak?
We haven't got there yet.
We haven't. Every good adventure starts with being lost. And so it was at this stage of the episode. The Large Blast podcast hosts spent a solid 7 minutes discussing whereabouts things were in the fictional made-up place of Commorragh.
Port Carmine, Matt. That was your segue.
Is Port Carmine, is that in Low Commorragh?
So with one holiday directional disagreement under their belt, they set forth to Low Commorragh and Fort Carmine, or something like that, I think it's called. Let's go to Port Carmine. That sounds like a historical wonderland. I'm ready to get my butt destroyed at Port Carmine. I've seen that on a t-shirt. Let's go.
Yeah, okay. Well, here we are at Port Carmine. It's an important starport of Commorragh. It's the second only in violent reputation to the Port of Lost Souls, which also sounds really interesting. Port Carmine hosts a dazzling array of spacecraft. It is from Port Carmine that the Duke Silius, the infamous Eldar Corsair, stole his flagship Incessant Agony from. So this is where Incessant Agony comes from. This sounds great.
That's a sick-ass name. I'm going to start calling my car that.
But we have to be we have to be really careful though, because the control of Port Carmine is currently being contested by two cabals, and they are the Cabal of the Slashed Eye and the Cabal of the Stolen Conscience, which both sound horrendously awful. And the two war fleets battle endlessly for the port, so we should be careful. But beneath this port, and this is why I wanted to come here, as well as wanting to see where the incessant agony comes from, beneath the port is a vast area full of jewels, religious artifacts, and relics, so I am told, beneath your feet, because they have been dumped by the raiding parties returning from real space. So they, I don't know, maybe like hiding from tax officials or something, but they come back here and they bury them, so nobody knows that they brought this stuff back with them. So beneath our feet,
that's some classic treasure.
Amazing.
Like X marks the spot treasure.
This is
Exactly.
like when the
This is the
cocaine
X.
washes up on the beaches.
Yeah.
Someone finds like a suitcase full of Colombian bam.
yeah. But there's many beggars around, and they're parched, scavenged the air. They're parched and they're scavenging the area, taking what they can find and what they can plunder. So we need to get in there quick and see if we can get some gold or cocaine.
Okay,
let's do it. Cool. Let's go. Let's scurry down there now and see if we can't find some of this delicious nose gold.
Well, as we were scurrying, gentlemen, it feels like we may have slipped into this kind of underground network of chambers, but it looks like there's a nice river down there.
Yeah. Should we check it out?
Steady on there, boys. Remember the countryside code. Always test it first by dropping at least one bollock into the water before dipping your entire self in. Oh my God, it's acid and pollution. It's acid and pollution. It's pure acid and pollution. I think this might be the River Khaides, boys.
Did say to stay away from this on the map. I think there was a picture of some corpses floating down it at one point.
Yeah, I think this might be the River Khaides. This is a bad one. And maybe some people might say a ham-fisted reference to the River Hades, but almost like...
Not me.
Almost like the way that Mortal Kombat puts a K in front of everything in their games. They've managed, this is the kind of the Mortal Kombat River Hades, but
they've
still.
also put on umlaut over the I, which is interesting.
That's how they throw you off the scent. That's how they don't. They're like, no one will ever know.
Put a cheeky umlaut on.
Yeah.
But this river's got some interesting characters on it that we could chat to, I think, because I've seen that there are corpse fishers that kind of float up and down this river. And their livelihood, this goes well with last episode, their livelihood is to fish corpses out and sell them to slaves for food.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that as well. I've also heard that obviously in Commorragh, there's these kind of like constant like jet bike races and hellions and stuff. So there's all these guys like on cool skateboards or whatever, and you kind of get extra points if you behead one of these guys whilst you're doing your lap or whatever.
Right.
Corpse fishers.
As if their life wasn't bad enough already.
Yeah, so if you're a corpse fisher from the River Khaides and you get you get double points for getting beheaded by a hellion or something like that. So
we better be careful that there isn't a race soon and they don't mistake us for one of them.
That is
true. In fact, I can't think of anything better to do in Commorragh than seeing one of these races. It's a city that never sleeps. I mean, if we're here, we got to see a race.
Perhaps they can give us a lift out of here to the inner rings.
Oh yeah,
because they don't go anywhere near mine.
I mean, that's it. We should probably be careful about how much we say inner rings around these guys, but. So the whole of Commorragh is a bit like the Isle of Wight GT, basically, isn't it? Where they just kind of like allow the roads to just be used for all kinds of jet bikes and shit like that. You know, if I'm living in Commorragh and I'm trying to go to my data input job and I roll out in my Skoda Octavia or something like that, I'm not lasting 5 seconds on the road because everybody here is on a cool ass jet bike. Everybody here is doing cool ass kind of Akira style races where you've got to like beat up, road rash another gang off the road or whatever. It's like if you're hitting the road on Commorragh, then it's like it's F-Zero. It's different set of rules.
Yeah. I think of it like a total wipeout track with Robot Wars things on it. Like flame pits and circular saws and bits jutting out, random explosions. Maybe Mortal Kombat does Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Way of talking about it.
Yeah.
I read as well, you can go, as well as just being part of the race, so they'll often race and do scourge hunting. So, the scourges, the like mutant things with the wings on their back, the like fly troops in the Dark Eldar army. The jet bikes and the Hellion riders will also just go hunting scourges as part of the race. So like, can you win the race and come back with the heads of X number of scourges? Which is just madness that these two like elite troops options are just fighting each other for fun constantly on their home planet.
Scourges are kind of an interesting little sub-quest in our talk. I know we don't want to go down too many different tangents. We've got a plan for the episode, but like they're obviously been heavily changed by a homunculus to be almost kind of bat-like. And they almost kind of essentially become feral as well, because they like kind of live a separate life like above the clouds of a kind of Commorragh. And there's this really cool fact about these scourges. It's like when you first become a scourge, there's this like kind of the highest point of Commorragh. It's kind of like this kind of light or something. It's like a hook or something on the ceiling of some place. And they're like, right, well, when you first become a scourge, the thing to do is to try to fly up and touch that and then come down again. And apparently it's like 50-50. People like try to fly up, they get tired, they fall, they die. Like the whole, again, everything you do, even the cool stuff, becoming like a scourge where you're like, I'm going to be a birdman and just leave all this torture behind. The first thing you do is basically Russian roulette with your life to try to like prove yourself to other scourges.
You can imagine the homunculi being like, oh, don't worry, I've given you a new set of wings. They're really, really fast, but maybe not as fast as a jet bike.
Exactly. Yeah, just taking another $5 off the next man to like fucking dog eat dog world.
Yeah, so the racing is pretty cool, right? But maybe we should get off and have another look round one of the other areas of the city.
And so it was that the LBP hitched a ride in the usual fashion, eventually being picked up by a local Hellion. They bartered their journey with a stinky nug from Stoney,
Smoke weed every day.
a $5 from Matt, and a peek at Welshie's bum to fulfill the age-old hitchhiking agreement of ass, gas or grass. And before they knew it, they found themselves flying through the inner rings of Commorragh, over the huge estates of the ancient families with their strange poisoned gardens and gruesome sculptures, over the unholy bone constructs of the witch cult, bleached white and shining in the gloom, before having to stop because Stoney needed a piss.
Yeah, so we're in the inner rings, folks, and it looks like these are kind of the areas around the main core spur, or like the kind of central hive spire, as you would get in a hive world. As much as we know the geography of this place doesn't make any sense. One of the places that I thought it'd be cool for us to visit here is Sorrowfell, which is a whole city-state within there. And I'd like to see the 13 screaming statues of Asdrubal Vecht.
Oh,
so there's these massive screaming statues that look down at you to remind you of how wonderful Vecht is and how he pulled himself up from nothingness to be your master.
Does not each one represent a different vengeance that he's taken in his life?
I believe so. Yeah. The vengeances of Vecht. How many of those 13 are real or not? I don't know, but they made me think when I was reading about them of the the two statues it's not really in the film in Lord of the Rings, but there's the two statues outside the tower in Lord of the Rings that scream as they try and like walk underneath them and like pierce I like to think of these literally as screaming constantly, a horrible, painful, piercing scream.
Yeah, they are very cool. And, and who knew? Vecht, also a pretty decent sculptor, it sounds like, as well. So another wing to his bow, another feather to his bow, as they say.
Yeah.
Or string to it. Another string to his bow, as they say. Feather to your cap, isn't it? Fucking, what am I talking about? So the other place I'm thinking maybe we should go. I've had enough of looking at these screaming sculptures. I find them a bit patronising, if I'm being honest with you. I feel like maybe we should slither on over to Alendrak. Have you guys heard of this place?
It looks a bit dark and imposing.
Well, this is kind of like the epitome of fucked geology, as you say. It all kind of stairs all over the place and that. because this is a place that exists between several dimensions at once. It's in a state of weird shadow that kind of makes it hard to know like what is real and what isn't. A bit like owning a black cat, when every time the lights are a bit dim, you're like, is that a cat? No, it's a shadow. What's that? Oh no, it's not a cat. And then you just end up stepping on your cat. That's a bit what like Alan Drack is like.
That sounds like Ravenguard's favorite place to be.
Yeah, probably is. They'd probably love it there. You could probably do a good a swap with a mandrake, because this is where the mandrakes live. Well, these are the cool models. I think that they've not got a lot of love in recent years in terms of rules. I don't even know if they're still in the model range, but they're the kind of guys with the kind of big baggy ninja trousers and like weird kind of like scythes and the long hair. They look quite anime. They're a bit anime.
They look like someone's just got back from their gap year.
Yeah, they do look a lot like that. Yeah, they do. Like they've learned how to do some kind of capoeira kicks and things like that.
I bet they do fire poi in the evening.
Oh yeah. There's definitely a bit of that with them, but they're really cool models. Are they still in the range? Those mandrakes?
Yeah, last time I played Dark Eldar, the guy had some, and they've got like black skin with the kind of bright green, like phosphorescent cracking through it, haven't they?
Yeah. But this is where those boys are from, and apparently there's a portal here that leads to a place that's full of shade demons, which sound really cool, but haven't really been elaborated far beyond that, as far as I could tell, except for the fact they exist and they can freeze a soul with their touch, which sounds really cool.
And I also was reading some stuff that like they're literal like shadows that can come to life. Like, and that's the kind of aim of the mandrakes, is to be at the point where they can just appear from any shadow. So your shadow can literally come to life and kill you. And I think that's all stuff to do with these shadow demons.
Well, I mean, they're definitely the kind of the more chaos undivided of the Dark Eldar, these mandrake guys, where they just want to like slink around and stuff. Because I mean, we've been avoiding the elephant in the room a little bit, which is that basically Dark Eldar are essentially just chaos, right? They're Chaos Eldar, right? I mean, I think we can say that, yeah.
Ooh, can we?
Can we? I don't know. I don't know. Do you guys remember when we talked to Gav 4?
Are there Chaos Eldar hiding anywhere?
Yes.
Strong.
Some in plain sight, but we can get onto that.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember that? And he was like, some are hiding in plain sight. I feel like maybe we could just say it now. These Dark Eldar, they're Chaos Eldar, right?
Chaos. They're pretty chaosy. I'll give you
that. Chaosy. Yeah, I reckon. There's quite a lot of soul exchanging with a Chaos God going on. But yeah, anyway.
The Ravenguard thing is interesting. I'd never really thought of it like this. Like that is a kind of whole separate potential. I guess Be'lakor is quite similar as well. He's really like undivided kind of shadow, and he gives out like a shadow aura now. But the Ravenguard thing, like there's a whole discipline of Ravenguard that they call shadow walking, where they do literally phase into shadow. And now we've got like Demon Shrike in the Warp, this big like Raven man fading in and out of darkness. Like he must be here. I reckon he's chilling out with the mandrakes.
Yeah.
He's listening to stories about how they took mushrooms in Lao, and he's thinking, I grew up, I didn't have my party time. I need to chill out with the mandrakes. I need to find myself. Find my soul.
I think it definitely could be, because the shade demons, they're kind of not really they're not really, as far as I could tell in my research, they're more kind of a chaos undivided thing, which, as we've talked about, doesn't necessarily mean it's an evil thing or a good thing. It's just a warp thing. So maybe.
So also down in this area, I see from the map, boys, somewhere else to visit is the beautiful bone middens of the witch cults.
Oh, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah, well, apparently it's an ossuary architecture. So all of the buildings are literally built from the bones of all of the sentient species piled up and carved for these guys to live inside. Guys and girls, actually.
I've heard that. Yeah, if there's a weird skull that you want to see from around the universe, this is the place to see it.
And I love a weird skull. What would you see? What would be your 40k skull of choice? This is an impromptu random topic.
I don't know, squirrel. If they got a squirrel, they got a squirrel skull in there, I'd be impressed with that.
I'd like Mephiston's just to check out his bone structure. Is it really as good as everyone says.
I
know he's not dead yet, but
that's like the drawbridge. It's like this jaw just opens. It's like so firm jawed.
You have to get his X-ray. I don't know. I mean, I think I'd like to see a navigator skull. That'd be quite cool.
Do they have like an eye socket in the middle?
But also talking of Dark Eldar, there's the Urgals, which used to be in the range and are in the Blackstone Fortress set with the I don't know, 5 eyes.
Like 4, at least 4.
Yeah. Or are they eyes, or are they just like noses? I think they're just noses.
Like sensor holes.
Sensor holes.
We've definitely talked about this. I think they might be sensor holes or something like that, or cloaca, or at least something like that.
Yeah. But I'd like to see a skull like that. Sure. Yeah, definitely.
But the Bone Midden, that's also where the witch cults live, right? I'm pretty sure the Bone Midden is where the witch cults live, and they're kind of important to Dark Angel Society because they're kind of gladiators, and they put on this gladiator show every night. Everybody comes down, and they're like specifically these gladiator shows where they're like try to do the most pain causing and stuff, and everybody kind of grooves on it, because they're all there. They're all super into drinking other people's souls and making a bunch of blood and pain, basically. So these are like a hugely like. Because I feel like Commorragh is like a really tense place to be. Like you can never let your guard down on Commorragh. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like and these are kind of like help to like kind of ease the pressure a bit because it's kind of like a shared soul drinking. So they're super important to the way Commorragh works. Because otherwise everybody's kind of all like, they're all like looking over there. It's really stressful to just be a person living on Commorragh. And if you can just go and it's kind of like a big party, where you just feel connected to the other people that live there or something.
So is this where they have like gladiatorial combat in stadiums basically, but do they kill slaves? Do they kill humans here?
They have it as all like basically these gladiatorial arenas are as common as phone boxes used to be. They're just everywhere because it's like they're just needed. So some of them are like, hey, step right up, come on down to shit Jimmy's like slave fighting, and they're like, they've got
so it's like the equivalent of our pub.
Yeah, more or less. It's kind of like a pub, exactly. So it's like, do you go to the ship's pub where there's like, just like, do you go to the Weatherspoons where it's massive and they just got like a load of slaves in doing shit fighting all the time? Or do you like save up your money and go to the really expensive pub where they're doing like, kind of like one head of a witch cult versus another head of a witch cult? But it's all the kind of the witch cult that are kind of like, they're a bit like the casino owners, going back to the kind of the Vegas analogy where they're kind of like this idea of vice being good for the people there, and kind of like uniting them and, and this kind of like governors of vice in a way.
It's similar to the Colosseum. I mean, they're playing exactly the same role. The quote I found was that Lithantu Kalva, which is Dark Eldar for the knife that stays the blade. So it's letting people have a little taste of the pleasure of drinking soul pain. Otherwise, Commorragh would just collapse into complete chaos.
And the witch cults, they're a bit like the Harlequins in a way where they're very theatrical and they kind of want to kill people in the most gory, horrible ways in order to kind of facilitate that. Yeah. So that's quite interesting.
And you won't know, guys, but I've been a fan of a witch cult for a particularly long time, and that's Lilith Hesperax. Because she is number one witch cult lady. She's got the big red hair and the cool throwing star things. And I was looking at why they're all dressed so super sexy. I've had a thing for witch cult models since I was, since I saw the Blood Bowl teams actually, probably back in the 80s. And they do it on purpose. They do it because they feel like showing as much skin as possible entices you to think that they have no protection. So it's not so much a sexual thing as a like, look how close the knife can get to them because they don't have any armor. It's all about like, I'm wearing as little armor as possible. Not I'm showing off a lack of armor, not my tits. But the witches go into like 3 different things. So the Hecatrix can become the Laceri, and those are the gladiators that use the razor flails. So those are like the swords that break up into like chains of swords. So they do it. And what they'll try and do is they'll try and throw someone up into the air so that when they lash them with the razor flails, the arterial spray hits the crowd. So it's like a proper 4D experience.
Yeah.
Like
people
go
sitting in the
for it.
splash zone at Waterworld or whatever.
Yeah. And then they have the Hydra, who are these things that, like, the various gauntlets that they're wearing can pop out crystal blades, like Wolverine claw style. But that's all about, like, the suspense, because they'll have someone in a hold and the crowd won't know, like, where this blade's going to erupt from on their arm. So it's all like, is this going to be the time it pops out and, like, cuts them? That's really cool. And then they've got the Arachne, who I think are my favorites. And they use those shard nets. So their whole thing is that they don't have close combat weapons in and of itself. They need to catch someone in a net and, like, hurl them into, like, impale them on spikes in the arena. So it's all about, like, catching someone. And
there's a model for that, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's a shard net model,
They definitely have if you buy a box of Witch Cult models, which is a great kit as well, to be fair. Like, they have all of those weapons are represented. I recognize all of those from just your descriptions.
I mean, that is very Colosseum. Those gladiators that had the nets to catch people in.
Net and Trident, man.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they also said, and we might have, depended whether it was cut or not, we discussed female Space Marines at the start, but the Witch Cults tend to be, all these gladiators are women.
I was going to ask about that,
because they're more acrobatic and they flow better and they can reach a higher pinnacle of the artistic perfection, because it's dancing as well as fighting than any of the men can. So they're never
look way better in songs.
Really high up. And they
that's just it. Is there is a little bit of this is all just MacGuffin to get some, like, tits in Warhammer, which is kind of fair enough. You know, like, I mean, because it kind of, like, it does go back to kind of the old kind of age of fantasy, like, tradition, where it's like, you know, the dude is like a guy in a loincloth with, like, a fucking 16 pack, and the woman is like some crazy big titted lady with, like, a bit of, like, cloth over each nipple, you know. It's like
Well, it looks like we're in luck, boys, because I think I've just found on the floor here some tickets to a show.
Let's hope we're not the prey.
But little did our wide-eyed hosts know that when you're on Commorragh, you're always the prey. And those tickets didn't lead to the arena at all, but instead to a darker place, a hollow place. The seedy underside of Commorragh is made from deep tunnels and cavernous layers of the homunculus, and it is within these complexes that they ply their trade, dealing in body modification, flesh crafting, drug distillation, and beauty elixirs. This is no place for free, pert young tourists at all. Even free, kind of old, saggy ones.
I thought I was going into the harmonica shop, but I think I might have taken us to the homunculi area.
Stoney.
Sorry, I knew those tickets.
The guidebook
too good
said.
To be true.
I know.
Oh,
they were attached to a string. Those tickets were attached to a string, and they pulled us in. I should have known. It was a giveaway. Should have been on my guard.
Well, I'm sure this deep, dark staircase can't take us anywhere worse.
Well, I mean, what have we got to fear from homunculi anyway? Surely they're cool. Like, isn't homunculi like a guy in a jar? Doesn't that what that means? I thought.
Well, it says free nose jobs here, and I've wanted one of those for a while.
Right, cool. Let's do it. Let's go get some massive noses, boys. So what about homunculi? What do they do? So homunculi, they're basically, again, really, really old Eldar that like were kind of around for many, many years before all this Dark Eldar shit, and now can't really be asked with anything. They kind of live underground. They don't really, I don't know.
There's rumours that a lot of them might have started those original kind of pain and pleasure cults that led to Slaanesh being born, right? These are the OGs.
So the originals, yeah.
They're a bit like if there's like a German guy in Argentina that's kind of being a bit cagey about their past. That's a bit like these guys, you know, like where they're just kind of like, oh yeah, whatever. But obviously they can kind of make. They're kind of flesh crafters, aren't they?
Yeah.
They can kind of make stuff out of like flesh. They can, they'll make, what you want your fingers longer? I've got a couple of foreskins here. Boom, whatever it is they need to do, they'll make it happen. They'll cobble together something, and whatever it is you need.
Made me think of like, do you remember those finger traps you had when you were a kid that were like tubes? You put them in, you can't get them back off.
That was kind of what I was going for. More or less. But they can kind of, like I mean, we talked about the scourges. or whoever they're called, the flying guys. Like, if whatever you want, like you can go, homunculus, I want to be a bit taller. I want this. I want another gland. I want another adrenaline gland. I want this, that, or the other. They kind of do it as long as you've got the money. You can go there and they'll help you out. But there's zero morality, zero care for their patients. You are nothing to them. They're ancient. They don't care the fuck about you. They just want to make weird flesh sculptures, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got good collections of stuff down there as well. Like they've got kind of artifact and weapon museums. One of the things I was reading was the Vexator mask, which is a shadow seer's face that you can put over your own face. So you can stitch it to your own face, and then whoever you see sees you as their loved one. So either you can sneak up on them and skin them while they're not looking, or maybe just seduce them, depending what you're into, I suppose.
Yeah.
That was one. And then the models have often got those like weird worms coming out of their back.
So
those
tail.
Those are the KDC hemivores. So these are worms that grow in the Khaides River we visited earlier. And you put them kind of into your body. And apparently the main reason they have them is to like clean up blood, because the homunculi don't actually like being really dirty.
Well, they're bloodletting themselves.
As they like cut up people and like the blood sprays on them, the worms will pop out and like lick the blood off them and go back in. So
they're not like leeches then.
I guess they're a bit like leeches in essence, but
But external leeches, they're
external
like
leeches,
a windscreen wiper leech.
They clean the floor.
Yeah.
They have the Panacea as well. I saw was an old STC that basically was captured by the Dark Eldar homunculi, and it was literally like a panacea, like a cure-all medicine that they've corrupted into just meaning that they can essentially play with whatever toxins they like and they'll be fine. So instead of using it as a medicine, they've just kept it for themselves so that they can poison themselves more than they needed to.
That came up in some research I was doing for an episode not that long ago. Maybe when we talked about STCs, I'm not sure. Yeah, but that they fought over the Imperium for that, and the Imperium lost.
And they're not even using it properly.
They're not even they don't even
out. They're just like pissing around with it. And I also thought and I think this has come up on an episode of ours a long time ago, but if we wanted a souvenir to take back with us, we could always grab one of these nightmare dolls. Do you remember the nightmare dolls?
Yeah, why did this come up in the did we do a Dark Eldar a long time ago?
Oh no, it was on the weird items where we did the shopping channel.
Xenos items.
The shopping channel. We did the shopping channel thing.
And this was a doll that you can like prick your finger, and once your blood gets on the doll, whatever injury happens to you happens to the doll.
Yeah.
So someone can think they've chopped your head off, and actually they've just chopped the doll's head off. A bit like a kind of reverse voodoo doll.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. So I mean, the homunculi, although gross, I think are one of the coolest and probably up there in most grimdark things that exist in 40k. These are people who just literally get pleasure from mutilation and torture.
Yeah.
It's quite funny that it's gone full circle with this. Like, at first they couldn't properly govern Commorragh because, it was such an important place or whatever. And now those same old boys are still there, like doing this weird flesh mutation stuff, and it's like even Vect has to kind of like essentially just let them get on with it without his like input because they're just kind of too important to the running of the city. There's this kind of real delicate ecosystem to this whole place of Commorragh.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he may be in charge, but is he? How in charge is he when he relies on all these things to be functioning?
Yeah.
But I guess that's the same. Like, how different is Vect from a governor of a hive city? How different are all of these, other than them being the extreme grimdark? Like, you're not going to have your cocktail parties without the Escher getting the nice clothing for you, true. Or the Orlocks fixing your cars, or it all needs to happen simultaneously. It is a society.
I mean,
to some
it's kind
extent.
of it's less. Like I guess if you're like the head of like a hive city or something, it's kind of like Machiavellian style politics, whereas this is just straight up, you are at war. There's no kind of pretense about it, is there? There's no kind of like, it's just like you are literally everybody there. As soon as we arrived here, in Commorragh, it was expected of us to do horrible things, go and see horrible things. It's just a part of your day-to-day life, whereas it's even though that is the way in a lot of hive cities, it's kind of not baked into it's not as baked into the system as it is here.
It's the epitome of organized chaos. Like it is constant chaos, but it's not quite just chaos because there's some form of order to it.
That's it. I mean, it's like is there any police in Commorragh? No, I don't think so.
I mean, well, I did read that the homunculi have a competition for certain things. So they'll pick you have to go and get this. Whoever brings one of these back first wins. And one of the things that they've been hunting was an RBT's judge's heart.
Well, really?
So that was on the tick list once.
I was going to say though, but in a way, it kind of polices it itself. That's like the organized chaos. So you don't need a police there because
that's kind of what I mean. Is there's no kind of hard and fast. Like the police represents a kind of a line in the sand, like a morality that you all kind of agree on. Whereas in Commorragh, it's just well, if you can bribe the right people to do what you want or do this, then it's might is right,
and the constant warring between the cabals as well. I mean
it must just be knackering to just always be expecting to have your head chopped off, be it by a bike flying by you, be it by someone just trying to do their shopping, be it by your own fucking shadow coming to life and you, constantly be expecting to be killed.
Definitely.
But at the same time, they having this endless supply of millions of slaves coming into the city that are captured from real space, humans, orcs, everyone. I mean, in a way, everyone can get what they need from killing the slaves. They can but I mean, that's the thing. Put their desire on the slaves.
That's the thing. Is it's kind of it really is a choice in a way. It's kind of like a sort of a city of serial killers in a way, because if you kind of choose to go to Commorragh and people can leave. There's no if you admittedly if you're too far down the path of damnation, then you'll be kind of shunned by the other Eldar. But you can, as we said before, you can kind of come and go. So if you're all of a sudden, because the Eldar
it's not the Hotel California.
Exactly. I mean, the Eldar don't want Dark Eldar to be around and kind of supporting Slaanesh as they see it. So if they can kind of win you back over to their side, then they will take you back as long as you're not too fucked up,
Yeah.
Do you reckon the Eldar send if you get expelled from 3 schools in a row in the craft world, Eldari and Ulthway or any of the other ones, do they send you here? Is this the kind of pupil referral unit for Eldar society?
It's all a massive failed scared straight program, basically. That's what it is. Yeah.
The Yarari character you mentioned earlier, Stoney, who was the gladiator, the gladiatrix, who died and then comes back to life. She's the one that
Are you guys talking about Ivrain, the woman with the cat?
Yeah.
Is that what you've been trying to pronounce? Ivrain, the major
Ivrain.
Eldar character.
Oh.
So
who's the now living
she comes back with a new
age.
alternative as well.
She comes back and gets out. Gets out of Commorragh, and then everyone follows her. Yeah. So in a way, that she's been redeemed.
Yeah.
She's but the homunculus hate her, don't they? They hate the fact. Apparently, I think that's the thing. Is the homunculus hate her. Yeah.
So many different factions.
Isn't she the one that's banging Gilliman as well? Isn't that?
She's the one that's banging Gilliman. Yeah.
We've got to do a whole episode on that or something.
You can read our fan fiction if you want to know more about that.
But I always like to think of what gladiatorial fights they have in these arenas. If they are as common as pubs are to us, then there's a Colosseum on every street corner, and you can watch a space marine or a captured human child or an Imperial guardsman fighting for their life against some half naked stripper lady flying around on a flying skateboard.
Jake Paul versus some washed up MMA star.
I really like the idea of there being like a book. Maybe there is a book like this, but wouldn't it be great to have a kind of on the line, almost turn into Chaos Space Marine who's just so pissed off at the world that he's taken himself off to fight in the pits of Commorragh. I'm sure that must have happened. So that's where you pick him up. He's downtrodden. He's had enough of the Imperium, and he's gone to beat up a load of
old
women in underwear.
What's his name? All scars on Emperor's Children guy.
Lucius probably.
Lucius. He's been to the pits in Commorragh several times and done lots of fighting in there. Yeah. He's a big
Emperor's
fan.
Children must love it. I mean, that's kind of another elephant we haven't really mentioned. Like, the Slaaneshi guys must love this place. Surely they can go and get whatever stitched to whatever they want.
But that's kind of half the reason why they won't let Psykers there, because they're just like, no, as soon as the Slaanesh guys find out about this place, we're done. They're going to move in. We're fucked, But
Bile's got a laboratory somewhere with those homunculi. Like,
he's got a little holiday. He's got a sneaky holiday home there. Doing an Airbnb out into fucking Commorragh.
Wipe down furniture and drains in the floor.
Yeah.
Right. So, is there anywhere else we want to visit before we leave this beautiful place?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe we should just have one quick check. Do you want to have a quick check behind this staff-only door over here, boys? Just have a little check, shall we?
Just open.
Have a little check. Oh my God, we're falling down a pit. Oh.
No!
And so the ground opened up to swallow the LBP hosts, taking them down into its ancient pit and the wheezing heart of the city. Its rotten core and its dirtiest secrets.
Fuck, boys. I think we might have ended up in fabled Cain's Gate.
Oh, no.
That's
it's a beautiful door.
It's a beautiful door, but on the other side, I believe, is the warp. I think this is where all the demons have been coming from.
Shit. Blimey. And we're right behind it.
Matt, I dare you, I dare you to poke your knob in through Cain's Gate.
All right, ready? Ready?
All right, here we go.
Yes!
And as the Large Blast podcast boys hurtled knob first through the warp towards the ever-gaping butthole of Slaanesh, they couldn't help but reflect on another successful Eldar episode in the bank. So we hope that this has helped educate you on just how little we know about Eldar. Until next time, we'll see you later.
The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions.
Okay, so last part of the show, you know what time it is. It's the Lords of Lore quiz. And everyone's talking about AI these days, aren't they? They're all like, AI this, AI that, AI can do this, AI can do that, AI can save you a lot of time, right? That's what they're saying. And I thought, hey, can AI save me time making a quiz? And they can, because I've on AI Quizmaker, I've asked them to make me a Warhammer 40,000 quiz for some of my very own specifications. So if you guys are ready, I believe we're good to go. All right. How well do you know Warhammer 40,000 lore? Take this 5-question quiz. First question. Okay. In Warhammer 40,000 lore, what is the official term for Space Marines' genitalia? Is it A, a gene seed? Is it B, a bolter? Is it C, a penis? Or is it D, an osmodular?
D.
I'm gonna say penis.
And I did this before we started, so I know that it's an osmodular, Matt. That is the official term for in Warhammer 40,000 lore, a Space Marine's genitalia is referred to as its osmodular. So there you go.
There we go. That goes back to what I said at the beginning. They're no longer male or female.
They're osmodulars.
They're osmodulars.
It's like, yeah. And that
Shut up, everyone. Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is one. I hope this isn't going to give itself away, but, let's see, shall we? Who is the author of the Warhammer 40k novel Path of the Seer? Is it A, Dan Abnett? Is it B, Adam Densky-Bowden? Is it C, Gavin McNeil? Or is it D, Gav Thorpe?
D.
Gavin McNeil doesn't exist. You sure it doesn't say Graham McNeil?
Yeah.
I stand by it.
I think it's our friend Gav.
I'll say Graham McNeil.
Right.
Or Gavin McNeil, sorry.
Gavin McNeil. Okay, well, Matt, you're right. It's Gav Thorpe. Okay, so cool. So
just also a fact check on the AI on Osmodula. Unless the Space Marine's penis is in its pituitary gland at the base of its brain,
which
then I'm afraid AI is fucked.
No, AI is unquestionable. We cannot question the AI. Okay, next question. Third question. Who is Gav Thorpe in the Warhammer 40k universe? Is he A, a famous Space Marine chapter master, B, an orc war boss, C, a renowned chaos sorcerer, or D, a prominent author and games designer?
I think you'll find it C. He is a renowned sorcerer.
I was gonna say the orc one.
Orc war boss.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll put in a renowned chaos sorcerer. He wasn't, guys. It turned out he was a prominent author and games designer.
Oh god.
I know. Okay, so all right. Next question. This is a doozy. This is a real tough one. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, AI, for this next question. Which faction in Warhammer 40k is known for embracing chaos and corruption? Is it A, the Imperial Guard? Is it B, the Adeptus Mechanicus? Is it C, the Eldar? Or is it D, the Chaos Space Marines?
There's been a weird... Every answer has been D, so I'm going to go for D.
Well, we've just discussed how the Eldar clearly embrace chaos. I'm going to say Eldar.
Okay, cool. I'm going to click Eldar as well. Oh, Matt, you were right. You were right. Okay. That leaves us on to... None of that matters, though, because now is time for the final question. And as you guys know, this is worth 10 quadrillion points. So AI, generate me a question. Let's get this doozy on the road. Which alien race is known for their psychic powers and connection to the warp? Is it A, the Orcs? Is it B, the Tyranids? Is it C, the Tau? Or is it D, the Eldar?
I think it's D.
What was the first option? Did you get Eldar twice?
Orcs was A.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Tyranids, Tau, or Orcs.
Well, there's two there. I'm going Eldar though.
Eldar.
D.
Okay. You were both right.
Oh,
there we go. In
win.
this twist of fate, you both win with 10 trillion points. Thanks, you guys, for listening to the show. I've been your host, Stoney. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
I'm off to get my wings replaced.